Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to episode 66 of Web3 Warriors, featuring Marco Santini, an award-winning NFT-based artist and muralist and creator of the Signature Series NFT collection on Maker's Place. Welcome, Marco. Thanks for reconnecting with us here for episode 66. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this discussion. As I mentioned, we're reconnecting. We did chat back on episode 46 at the beginning of the year, so it's a nice way to wrap it up. This is actually our final episode of season 3, so episode 66. Wow. We bookend each season at 22 episodes, so it's a really great time. We'll be taking 2 weeks off after this episode, as well as I'll be traveling, going to Toronto, and busy with a couple things, and really just trying to organize the podcast for the next stage. You know, we're really trying to build towards something, continue to improve on both the production and the marketing side, and really, you know, formalize things a bit more. But the conversations are what matter most, and we continue to push things forward. So thanks again, Marco, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm David Karoma, your host. I go by Chrome in the metaverse, and I'm really excited for what we've been able to accomplish here so far on Web3 Warriors. If you do want to join our community, you can check out our website at web3warriors.io, which will bring you to our Metaverse Corner, temporary one. We're going to be building up a more permanent Metaverse Corner shortly, but you can also sign the guest book at web3warriors.io to be entered in for a contest to win some wearables, and also you'll probably get some free airdrops down the road, because we're going to have a lot of really fun digital assets coming out of the Web3 Warriors community in the weeks and months ahead. So please do sign the guest book at web3warriors.io. I appreciate you. And with that as well, anybody who's here in the chat, thanks for joining in the live stream. We always encourage questions from the audience. If anything that we're talking about, you know, stokes your interest, or, you know, you just have a question about any of the topics we're kind of going over, definitely feel free to chime in. And we do like to give away NFTs for the most thought-provoking question as well. We have some pretty cool artistic NFTs in the collection, so we're just going to throw that out there as well. But yeah, for today, for the topic for episode 66, aside from looking at Marco's amazing Web3 journey and what he's got on the blockchain so far, and maybe what he's planning to do into the future, we also want to look at a recurring theme on this show, which is artists, traditional artists, who have a career prior to the blockchain, jumping into Web3 and really using it to have a new angle for creative expression, and really maybe helping them kind of take their artistic career to just a new level. And it's not necessarily replacing anything they're doing, quote unquote IRL or in the physical space, but really enhancing it and adding to it. So that's really what we want to focus on today, is how artists can navigate the space in a productive way, in a way that makes them feel better. We talked about this briefly with Sheila Darcy a couple weeks ago, and she had some really great gems about the self-care angle of this technology, and the idea that we're bringing communities together, we're bringing people together in new ways that weren't possible before, and that alone can have a lot of really good intrinsic value, right? And good value for you as a person to meet new people and to connect. So there's a self-care side to it, I think, but there's also the professional side to it, right? And I think that's equally as important. And I do think that Marco has taken on the professional side and really created some really interesting pieces on the blockchain, right, that are phygital, that we talked about last time he was on here, and we'll definitely dive into it again. But the idea to take something like an art style that you've already been kind of perfecting, but bring it into the digital world, maybe animate it, maybe tell a story with it that's now immutable on the blockchain, right? And so it just kind of adds to your overall catalog of what you have available. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity for artists, and I think that this part of NFTs is not spoken about enough, that this is just a new tool for artists. It's a new creative endeavor, a new opportunity, a new way to reach new collectors and people who might resonate with your art who otherwise wouldn't have seen it at all, right? So that's what we want to talk about today. That's what Web3 Warriors has always been focused on and committed to. So with all that, welcome back, Marco. I'm really excited to have you here. Maybe we can just hear a little bit about what you've been up to since January and what's new for you in Web3. Thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you. And congratulations. 66 episodes. That's quite a feat. I'm honored to be your season 3 finale here. I really enjoyed talking to you in January. I really felt our conversation put into perspective a lot of things I've been working on and how to translate what I'm doing for a bunch of different audiences. So I really appreciate that. It was very insightful. The last last few months have been really busy. Since we spoke, was able to sell a few more pieces. I've been painting at a few schools. I was actually yesterday the artist in residence for this career day, which is pretty awesome.
Nice.
At the Academy of Innovative Technology in Brooklyn, getting to tell people that your creativity can spark many different passions, from the clothes we wear to the products we buy to the packaging to digital designs and NFTs. And actually, it was of all the schools I've spoken to in the last few years, it was a school that really had the greatest understanding of NFTs. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Nice.
But yeah, I think outside of the professional, client-facing work and public work I've been doing, I've also been just kind of honing my own skills. I really dove deep into Procreate. My original series, a signature series, I used, and for most of my digital art, if not all of it, I've been using the Adobe Suite. But I've really been appreciating the different brushes, different capabilities that Procreate has as an iPad app. So I've been messing around with that, trying to create every single day for now the last 3 or 4 weeks here, which has been really helpful. But
nice.
Yeah,
no, it's interesting. I mentioned Sheila off the top, sorry to interrupt, and she's been doing these everyday creations, so it's really cool that you spoke to that. And yeah, Procreate. Awesome.
Yeah, I think for the everyday creations, for me, it doesn't necessarily look at it as public facing, kind of sell it eventually, but really just for me to see how much I can develop and push the envelope of my creative awareness. I think that it's really important for artists to use as many tools as they can fit into their tool belt, and you can learn anything on YouTube. That was the biggest takeaway yesterday. People were asking me about how to create NFTs and how to use which programs and how to do certain animations once I showed them my digital designs, my murals. And I was like, YouTube University is the best free option out there. That's exactly how Adobe. It's how I learned to use spray paint. It's how I used to learn Procreate. You can type in very specific action items on there and get many, many videos. If you want a shorter video, longer video, in-depth, far away. I really appreciate the Creator Academy, support that YouTube has for all the different teachers out there. So I've been keeping really busy, change it up a little bit in terms of scenery. So this is my art studio as opposed to my office that we were in last time. But Yeah, feeling very inspired this afternoon here
Looks
with you.
awesome. I know you had mentioned, I don't know if you want to share, you were working on a little something for a family member, a little bit of art.
Yeah, I won't get into the specifics because hopefully she doesn't listen to it before it comes out. But a lot of kids yesterday at the talent fair asked me how I got started in art, and I feel like for me at least, I was always an artist. I just didn't know what my medium or my outlets were, and so when I started, I basically started to invest in myself. Anytime I had to buy a gift for a birthday, a wedding, a friend, a family member, anytime I had to invest in something, I was going to invest in myself and create a custom gift. And I started doing that with family and friends, and it started to kind of grow, and people would ask me for things, and it really taught me how to value my time and my efforts, and really kind of pushed me in different directions. And I'm doing that to this day. I think that it shows a really personal touch of when you can translate an idea and something special, one of a kind for someone that you love and appreciate. And I think that not only am I continuing that passion, but I feel like a lot of the students I talked to yesterday can take that, and hopefully the listeners here, if they're thinking about getting into the creative world, it's just something beautiful. I think that the arts in general can be viewed as this very wide spectrum, from just kind of getting lost and having it as a hobby, to doing it to enjoy, to doing it just for yourself, to doing it for friends and family, to doing it for public consumption. And along that spectrum, you get to choose. I like to continue to say there are no mistakes in art. You can always paint over, you can always make what you want. And I just find it to be a little bit of everything at different times. And so I feel grateful to be creating for myself, my family, and the public in different ways.
That's awesome, man. And I know you shared, I think it was on Twitter, a collage that you had made. I believe you share a birthday with your uncle, was it? And it was like a really impactful collage, really sentimental. It was really cool, man. I can see how, granted, you have to have the artistic abilities to create these things, but I could see how those are better than your average gift. You definitely put that extra bit of thought into it and sentiment.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, a big change, I guess, from January to now is that for most of my Web3 life, I've been focusing on books, and specifically signed books by really rare icons, starting out in the art world, moving along into the sports and entertainment world. I just created a book signed by Michael Jordan and collaged it together in this new, really awesome way.
Nice.
But then what I decided to do is I feel like the price point of what I'm working on is a little bit higher than your average Web3 project. And so I feel that I want to be able to connect with the entire community. That's what I love about my murals. I can paint a mural on the street, and people from all walks of life can appreciate it, who walk by and see it. But I don't want my pricing and my products here to be so high end that only it's available to select few. So one thing I'm trying to figure out is how can I create for a wide spectrum. And so with these rare signed books, they start out very valuable, very high end, very expensive to invest in, and then to kind of take it into an artistic way. I feel like I add a lot of value. But in terms of trying to figure out that more mass market approach, to your point, I've been trying to, instead of working with books, I've been trying to create my own books. And so through basically a collage setup in Photoshop, I'm able to take, and aggregate a ton of different photos around a single subject, put them together, and to see how I want it to look on a flat image. And then I take that flat image and then spread them out over the course of 15, 30 pages, so that you really get to see it pop up as there's only a few images on each page. And in that sense, I can really kind of work backwards to create the illuminated book that I was working with, except now I can create it custom for a wedding, for an anniversary, for a birthday gift, for a graduation gift. And so even though there's probably a little bit more work in terms of you have to format and organize and create the book,
it's a lot of work, man.
A lot more. I think because the product overall costs me less, and it's probably a little bit less time than these super high-end signed books, I'm hoping that I can have a mass market appeal and kind of look at the custom gift idea as an angle. And specifically with Web3, I'm trying to figure out if that means creating an NFT for each piece afterwards, because I feel, I think you made a really good point about one of your focus points for this podcast, this idea of how artists IRL are translating in the Web3 world. And I think I got to be honest, I really had a wide range of perspectives in terms of the signature series being NFTs. A lot of people ask me, why do you have to have them as NFTs? They're physical pieces. You can just have them as the really beautiful illuminated books. You don't necessarily need that. And for me, I believe in my heart that these NFTs serve as provenance. I think of them as digital certificates of authenticity that show ownership, that have a cool aspect to bring physical pieces into the digital world and have a digital component for physical pieces in the real world. And so I stand behind it, but there is a part of me that thinks had I not had an NFT component, that more of them may have sold from now. But I'm not letting that kind of get in my way, because I still believe in this aspect of knowing who has my pieces, knowing that they can transfer with the ownership of the NFT, and kind of knowing that in perpetuity, it'll be kind of beautiful to see who has it, where it is in the world, and how it's being appreciated.
Yeah, I think so. And just to put a exclamation point on that, it's, if you purchase the NFT, you get the physical book as well. That you hadn't separated them, right?
That's correct.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah. So maybe while you're on the topic, then let's get a quick bit of refresher on the signature series. We're looking at we got Pablo Picasso up here and a few others, but yeah, maybe just a brief background on what kind of inspired the signature series and how you managed to acquire these really kind of rare books by impressive artists, and then kind of cut them up and chop them up and then digitize them in your own way. It's really fascinating. Yes, please just give us a brief refresher on that.
Of course. So it really started as an educational journey during COVID. I said, if I want to be one of the best artists, I need to learn from the best artists. I didn't go to art school. I didn't study art over a long period of time. And I really wanted to focus on the masters and try to understand what made them so memorable as icons that we still talk about, appreciate, and go see their pieces today. And so it started out as a deep dive, trying to read their bios and understand, who they were through documentaries, through gallery presentations. And then during COVID, I had this desire to be physically in front of their pieces, but galleries were shut down, museums were shut down, everything was shut down. And so for me, I decided I wanted to invest in these rare books to bring them into my art studio. And right before COVID, I did a really powerful job. Did this lobby for a law firm. They bought like 25 pieces of mine, kind of did a very customized beautiful layout for them. And that not only helped my family get through COVID, but also allowed me the opportunity to invest in these books. And so I was finding them at museum collections, at high-end bookstores, kind of making sure to get through the right channels. And as I acquired them, I just started reading them. And I was like, this artist, Picasso signed this book. I'm sitting in front of this book that Picasso signed. I would read through it. And I was hoping that some of his greatness would, just kind of be transformed into my, energetically into my mind, and just like being in a presence where he was at one time. And I did this with all these artists. And as I was doing it, and as I was reading their stories, I was amazed to kind of find a few key points that really related to all their stories. One, they all had these groups that they ran their ideas off of or stole ideas from, and just kind of had their own cohorts. They all had secondly, they all had a new way of kind of seeing the world that really translated into a new art style, a new medium, a new ism. And thirdly, they all had a great deal of pushback when they started out their ideas. I mean, you look at Lichtenstein or Keith Haring, people were saying, oh, these are just comic book characters. These are not real deal artists. They're not important. Shouldn't be in a museum. And they just believed so much in their work and their style that they kept doing it. And they just touched so many people and continue to touch so many people after they've been, passed away for so many years. And so I really took those three ideas and kind of wanted to build off of these books. And rather than just have them in a, bookshelf collecting dust, not being appreciated, I took the chance and decided to transform them into artworks, and I started cutting them up. I would say different from collage. So with collage, you're moving things around a lot and you're trying to place them exactly where you want them. What I'm trying to do with my new art category, I'm calling Illuminism. It was actually kind of cool. The first big quote I got was actually out of someone from Christie's who said it was a new art category. I'd never seen anything like it before. And that motivated me. So I'm calling it Illuminism, the idea of shining a light onto a subject and trying to be a mirror, trying to show who they are objectively with the pages that are in front of you, but I'm not moving them around too much, and I want it to be as close to where the position of each page was when the actual artist signed it. So I am really extracting pages, cutting things away to really just leave behind the true essence. I believe that we are more than our superficial covers. We're all the pages and layers within, and basically I'm trying to extract that. So I created these physical art book designs that were signed by these artists, created NFTs of each of them that basically tried to imagine what the artist would be creating if they were alive today for the Web3 world. So there was a neon colorscape that kind of linked all the pieces together, but there was some animation, there were some designs that would try to accent certain aspects of each artist. And was very fortunate to launch it at Scope for Art Basel 2022 in Miami on the first day.
Where I met you.
Yeah, exactly. That was a very powerful week for many reasons. But yeah, right before I met you on VIP day, the first piece sold for $35,000, which was incredible within an hour on the VIP day. Then I took the whole series to Puerto Rico at the Lighthouse Gallery, sales top 6 figures. It was a really powerful exhibit. And now well, then I actually went to Paris for Blockchain Week. I was able to exhibit some of the NFTs there. And right now I'm kind of in this space where I want to, been very fortunate to sell some of them. There are still some of them available. We're trying to figure out next steps in terms of an in-person show, hopefully in New York City, looking at different exhibits and ideas to kind of get them in front of the right collectors. But in the meantime, I must say there's kind of, my vision of, I don't think one thing I would recommend to NFT artists and really artists in general is kind of defining what success means to you. Because I don't know if I really figured out what success meant to me. I think I can define it in many different ways depending on my mood. But is it related to a dollar sign? Is it related to a community? Is it related to how people are reacting to it? How you feel about it? There's so many different ways. And there was moments of excitement of, hitting dollar amounts and meeting people I'd never met before and getting to heights I'd never thought I could have done. But then there was a little bit of a letdown bringing some of the pieces home initially. And then I sit in my room where all these pieces are kind of talking to me, and I look around and I see, the Georgia O'Keeffe, the Liechtenstein, the Picasso, the Basquiat, and I feel like in some ways like inspired and honored to be in a room with them, that they're like still talking to me, to know that they would never have been in the same room altogether. And yet I have a room where a piece of them still is. And it's really been kind of this thought-provoking, creative mindset of trying to think about next steps and what I'm doing. And it just kind of, I guess it's just beautiful, bittersweet aspect that I believe they will sell, and I know they will be put in homes or collections around the world. But until then, I'm really appreciating the motivation and inspiration that they're providing.
Amazing. That's really inspiring, man. And I think to your point about bittersweet, and I think that sentiment is a very common one in NFTs, especially for those who do make some sales that they're very proud of, but then things go quiet, right? And it can be a little bit discouraging and difficult. So I'm glad you kind of touched on that. And how do you I like that you talked about actually making the push in person, right? So it's not like you're pushing them super hard on Twitter. You're not necessarily jumping into the spaces and trying to hope that you get like one, well-funded whale, as we call them in the space, saying, oh, that's amazing, and buying it. Although there is that option, and maybe you want to explore the spaces. But at the same time, I like that you're leaning into the physical part of it. And when you have those conversations in person, I assume it's usually at events that are either art events that happen to have a little bit of NFTs, or they're NFT events. So you might have a different reaction depending on the type of event. But how does that conversation go when you're like, they're looking at the physical piece and they say, I want to buy that. And it's like, okay, you got to go to Maker's Place, have some Ethereum, although I think Maker's Place accepts credit card as well, right? So maybe they have the option to pay in fiat as well. But how does that conversation go as far as like needing to buy it on Maker's Place and then get the physical?
Great question. I'm definitely putting more of an effort into social media. I just signed a personal contract with myself, if you will, to be on Twitter at least 30 minutes every day. I never did Twitter. It wasn't part of my original ecosystem, but I really respect and starting to understand the power it has in kind of sharing ideas, and specifically with the Web3 community. It's definitely something I want to lean into more. I've just noticed that the reaction of people seeing the physical pieces in person just can't compete with seeing it digitally. People walk around it, they see it, they understand the depth, the angles, the fact that it was completely signed and historically contextual to this artist's life. I think there's just something really special about seeing it in the room and being with it. And so I want to do both because I feel like both are important. Obviously, both have easier and more difficult challenges, but I do want to have more physical in-person shows with them. I've got one lined up for next week, just kind of a few pieces in this group show. But in terms of having like a proper show, I would only show them with screens present. So I do feel that it's really amazing to see the digital with the physical, see how they communicate, see how they really speak to each other in terms of the animated version and the futuristic version, the historical version, if you will. So I don't really think there is a wrong answer in terms of how to get it out there. You just have to get it out there. And every day it's not in front of other people is kind of a day wasted.
Yeah, but what you said about needing the screen there and having both the digital component on display as well as the physical and not just leaning into one or the other, I think is important too. And yeah, it's really cool. I'm remembering that scope presentation, and shout out to Maker's Place because their whole little corner was really awesome. But I remember looking at yours and being like, whoa, phygital, like in-person phygital, like you got the NFT right here and you got this rare physical piece right next to it. And I was just kind of mind blown because I had already been looking at different phygital projects, but I really think I have not seen one that is as purely phygital as yours, where like in every way you've really taken the physical rare art book by these legendary artists, right, made them your own in like kind of a unique way, chopped them up artistically, you know, kind of designed them, and then digitized and animated them. It's just like the layers of creativity is really, really cool, man. So how are you feeling in general just about the NFT place or the NFT market right now? I know you just mentioned kind of bittersweet, and obviously you have some that you're hoping will sell soon. We're looking at this Salvador Dali piece, which is amazing. I'm looking at his face kind of floating across, and it's just so cool. But yeah, how are you feeling in general just about the NFT market and the way things are kind of evolving?
I feel optimistic overall. I do think it's easy for people in the space and potential buyers to kind of hide behind, oh, it's not a great time. I'm not, I'm not in a place to buy right now. And I understand that. I do see overall a lot of creativity. You know, I think you can look at the numbers and look at overall NFT sales are down, numbers are down. But I feel like a excitement between the different events that I've been to recently. Not only my launch events, but being at Paris Blockchain Week was really amazing to see what people are working on and how the overall tone is. I think people overall want to be optimistic no matter what the situation is, so they can kind of project, onward and upward. But
For sure.
I won't let whatever the market is dictate how I'm feeling. I believe I'm creating greatness no matter what I do in the physical world and the digital world. And if it's now is the time for it to sell, so be it. If not, I'm not disturbed by it. I think that timing is everything in life, but also in creativity. And you really never know. So I think I continue to push on. I'm working on, I feel like one aspect when I define success, I know I was talking about it earlier, for me, I define success as being able to create what I want, when I want, wherever I want. And I really feel I'm in a position where I can be working on many different projects and kind of pushing one, see how it goes, then going to the other. And that kind of creative freedom really gets me excited and gets my brain going a lot of different directions. And that's kind of the state that I love to play in. And so,
and you'd say Web3 NFTs kind of give you that like new direction opportunity, right? Because like what you did with this piece, with the signature series, literally, I think can only be done in NFTs, right? Like you can't really assign that kind of value to a beautiful digital animation the way that you can with NFTs, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I believe so. And I believe every day there's more and more mass market appeal. I think no matter if the market's up or down, I think there are some really great people and great companies working on making everything more seamless in Web3. And I know we talk about it a lot. And I think once it's as easy to create a wallet, easy to buy and sell, as easy to store, as easy to just, once it becomes more mass market, I feel like it's once it's the Venmo of the world, I think that everyone is just going to be like, I still believe we are early. And
It's
I
funny
think
you say that because we don't get Venmo in Canada.
in the US, it is the easiest. I mean, you get it right away. It's amazing. But yeah, I think that gives me hope. I think knowing the people in the community, knowing the businesses in the community, knowing the vision for the community really puts me at ease despite the up and downs of the everyday markets.
No doubt, no doubt. I want to give a shout out to Grayson, Ray Song the Great in the chat, coming through with some pretty interesting questions, and shout out to Ingrid as well. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else in the chat, feel free to shoot some questions over. His first question was, have you tried selling just the NFT first? Which I think we kind of spoke to that, about how integral you see it as, like kind of selling them both together, and you do get the physical piece as well, you know, when you buy the NFT, right? And so it is kind of a you know, combined deal, right? Digital,
yeah, it's
in its
definitely
truest form.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I understand the perspective, and of all the, I mean, I sold a few in 2021 and 2022. I have never sold an NFT without having a physical component. So I've always looked at it as standing with the physical art piece. And I think that might be more of a phygital angle, might be more of a Web2 angle, but I really believe that having, you know, there's nothing wrong with having the best of both worlds, and having the physical,
not at all.
These kind of, to me, makes the most sense.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's what honestly attracted me to the fact that you seemed so committed to both sides. I think is really cool. And so he also kind of had some questions around, in the space they call it WIP, so WIP, work in progress kind of content, right? And it's very popular. It helps kind of generate interest. But in your case, because you are, you know, kind of attacking or like cutting up these like legendary art pieces, there might even be more provenance to the process of how you kind of piece it together, and then maybe even selling those process content pieces as NFTs, right? So that's kind of how I sum up his question there. How do you feel about something like that?
Oh, that excites me. It's definitely something I've been thinking about. I feel like one of the big takeaways for me from showing at these last few shows was that I need to have a broader pricing spectrum. I think because these are so rare, and because they're so valuable, and because they start at 20K and up, I really believe it limits a great deal of the market. And I'm not trying intentionally to limit the market, but I do believe that not only am I adding value, but there is a certain upfront cost that goes into, you know, acquiring these books. And so it's really kind of based in that, also my prior sales and certain projects. But I do think if there's a way to, you know, to capture there's from what I experienced when I was at Art Basel, there's a huge pool of people who really appreciated what I did, and there's only a small pool of people who actually, you know, pulled through and purchased. And that's okay. I have a 22-piece collection. It's meant to be small and kind of an exclusive club. But that said, had I figured out a way, and this is something, you know, I'm thinking about moving forward, had either cheaper physical pieces matched with NFTs, just cheaper NFTs, you know, it could be process shots behind the scenes, individual page designs from the book, something where it's more of a mass market appeal. I think I could capture a broader range of people who really appreciate my work. So it's definitely something I'm thinking about.
Awesome. And he had a couple other follow-up questions, but I think we've kind of tackled them already around considering, you know, making the NFT and physical art together, which is very much what you've been committed to. And you just said, you know, you don't even sell an NFT without having some kind of physical piece attached to it. So on that point, and to your other point about, you know, oh, maybe that's a little too Web 2 to some people, you do have people who are spending a lot of money on NFTs and do not want anything physical, right? And some of them are anonymous. They don't even want to be asked for their address. That's like an affront to their ethics, you know? So how do you feel about a purely digital piece? Maybe it's a work in progress piece, maybe it's something, but to your other point about kind of broadening the net, right? And these are very specific to like your almost traditional art collector, but maybe the whales in NFTs and Web3 as well. So a kind of cross section of those two collector bases, right? Whereas someone like myself and others who maybe don't have thousands of dollars worth of ETH, but love your art style and want to, you know, have a piece of it and maybe join your community in some, you know, way, tangible way, by buying an NFT from yourself. How do you feel about that? You know, and have you kind of thought of exploring that?
Yeah, I'm definitely open to that. I love that idea, and I think it keeps coming back to me in different ways. I feel very fortunate in the Web3 community. I know every single one of my collectors. I have a personal relationship with them. I do know, for the most part, their addresses. I've, had to communicate with them in terms of picking schools all around the world to paint on their behalf, which
Right.
was one of the communal
That's one of the
components.
offers in your sale, right?
That's correct. So any purchase in the collection, the buyer gets to choose a school anywhere in the world, and I get to paint a collaborative mural with the students. I basically ask them what's important to them, what inspires them. I do like a paint by numbers background, and I show them how to use spray paint. They
So
paint the whole
awesome.
background, and then I paint their words in their mural, and then I talk to the students about the importance of creativity and digital art and NFTs and kind of the full spectrum of where creativity can take you, just because I feel like it's really helpful to share that with such incredibly creative young minds who really are looking at so many different ideas and may not even know about it, to just be aware on their radar as they're moving forward and possibly thinking. I mean, yesterday at the school, I can't tell you how many people came up to me with their sketchbooks or drawings in their science books or labs, and it was just amazing to see what we typically call as just straight up doodles, like to really see the creativity and beauty that they're able to come up with. And they're just drawing and having fun. And I totally get that. But if they're interested in pursuing it further, I want them to know like these are certain steps that you can take to do just that. And I feel like we're all better off in having the creators of the future know more about this process.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, you're going right to the roots, like it's one thing to try to onboard people who have been artists, but to actually show kids, what you're doing and what is possible is a whole, another layer of onboarding that I think only very few people are actively able to do right now. So yeah, kudos to you, man. It's really amazing.
That's what originally I loved about your title, Web3 Warrior. I mean, I feel like I'm not an OG. I'm not, one of the original just NFT collectors or buyers. I have the physicals with the digitals and this digital world, but I feel I'm going out there into the real world as this Web3 warrior, explaining and kind of being a voice for what it can be, and explaining it to people who are not in that world. And I think, when I remember hearing your the beautiful alliteration of it and the logo and seeing it, I was like, this guy's onto something. So I very much respect how you came about with your own title terminology and process here.
Appreciate you, man. And honestly, it was inspired by people like yourself and other creators. I was lucky enough to kind of be in the hype wave of late 2020, early 2021, when NFTs were just blowing up on Clubhouse. And during that time after into 2021, I mention often the Dream Conduit, which is a group we've been involved with for over a couple years, and it's actually unfortunately needing to fold, but that's another topic. But yeah, it's been inspired by those conversations on Clubhouse and in the Dream Conduit that I've had with amazing creators, and they are all warriors. We're all just trying to like push something forward because we believe in the technology, we believe in creativity and art, being valuable and worth something, and really impacting the culture and pushing the culture forward. And so as much as people like to, shit on arts degrees and talk, all this stuff about arts and the idea that only math and science matter, I think that, we've heard from others talking about kids, we hear a lot of emphasis on STEM, right? But on Clubhouse and during 2021 was the first time I had heard of STEAM. You add the A in there, right? Because it is just as important as these other elements of education, And so, yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. And that is really what the show is all about. And not just artists, also builders and technical developers on the blockchain who, it's a different type of art. It's a different type of creativity, but the innovation that they're actually pushing in Web3 and in the space is just as important, I think, as what the artists are doing. So it goes hand in hand. And yeah, that's what the show is all about for sure.
I agree. Whether you're an artist, you're a creator, you're a builder, you're an entrepreneur, I think, and also a big piece of advice I was giving to the students yesterday, once you find your voice, you have to run with it. I feel like, in studying the greats, I learned their different styles. I understood what they were doing, and then I took it and ran with it on my own. I feel like that's what makes it unique to be a Marco Santini piece. And that's what I was telling the students yesterday. Like, you start out copying all these artists and playing around with these characters and bubble letters and all these things. But once you find your style and you can, create something that you really enjoy doing, that's when you've kind of struck gold. And that's, I think, really inspiring when you can say, I believe in this so much that, I get in flow, or I want to be, there and doing it whenever, wherever, and just see where it goes. I very much support the creative exploration in any direction.
Awesome. And when you're talking to these kids and maybe any other, even adults who just haven't been aware of what NFTs are really offering right now, how are you talking about kind of entering the NFT space specifically? And how do you have that conversation? Is there a kind of best practices you say, you know, if you're going to get into NFTs, maybe try this angle?
I think it's a very delicate conversation. I usually started out by trying to ask the students about digital designs and if they're familiar with the Adobe suite, if they're familiar with Procreate, seeing how they understand those digital creative mechanisms. And then from there, trying to explain, you know, the biggest question I get all the time when I'm talking at schools and I ask kids is like, what is an NFT? And I'm like, NFT can be anything, you know, I explain non-fungible token, but I explain it as that it can stand for anything. When I in my instance, when I say it can be a digital certificate of authenticity to prove provenance, to show exactly who owns the piece, but also have cool animated, colorful aspects, and I show them the relationship, they get it, you know, and I explain it can be used as a ticket or access to a club or, you know, bringing you a certain utility. I think they need to see the real world component. So to specifically answer your question, I don't say, hey, this is what NFTs, you should go do this. It's like, I want to see how they respond on their own, because I don't, you know, I want it to be right for everybody, but the truth is nothing is right for everybody. And so if they want to create digitally and not sell it, I think that that's beautiful. If they want to, I think that they should know their different options. And one thing I believe that some of the digital marketplaces could really benefit from is either doing something like I'm doing, like bringing this awareness and teaching students about these digital art platforms, maybe even making it easy for them to potentially sell, you know, this certain high school collection or this town or this county or this state's, you know, top artists. And I do see it having great applications for the creators of tomorrow and to kind of continue to bring up, you know, this whole creative world that we're living in.
Awesome. You know, I got your Basquiat piece on there, and I just realized now that he winks at you. I was like, did he just wink at me? He totally did.
That's very subtle. Awesome. I'm glad you caught that.
Very cool. So that's awesome that you want to see more, you know, kind of focusing on teaching the kids, because I think they are the digital natives, you know, like even myself as a gamer, lifelong gamer, I think I adapted NFTs, and frankly I always say, you know, the gaming and the metaverse is what really pulled me into NFTs, but it's the culture and the community and the impact that has really kept me around, you know, and the technology and what's possible. But to that point, you know, what do you think we should be doing more of, or what are you kind of concerned about when you look at how NFTs are being marketed to people in general and kids?
Well, before I answer that, I want to say what really brought me 100% sold on the NFT world was back 2020 or 2021 when my daughters were asking me for money for, you know, their allowance or when they were spending their birthday money on Roblox, and knowing that they were taking physical money in the real world and putting it into the digital world to get their skins, to get their houses, to get their different aspects. I'm like, these kids are growing up in a world where it's normal and encourage or exciting for them to take physical money, put it into a digital world and use it and see the fruits of its labor. So to me, seeing that, kind of similar to your point, was really when I understood kind of the importance, not only for myself, but how this could really, really take off. Concerns about NFTs, I worry. You know, I've always been very much in a public arena. You know, I grew my account on Instagram. That's how I've been always focused in terms of the murals and the schools and the places I played all around the world. I think with the NFT, I do understand kind of the anonymity that a lot of people have, and I just worry that it could cause unknowns, like they don't know if this is supporting this project, like are people just hyping something because it's real or not. Like I want to invest in something and be part of something that I know is legit, whether it's hyped or not. And I think that might be one of my, you know, biggest lessons from what I did. I didn't have a marketing budget. I didn't have crazy Twitter or Clubhouse, you know, people telling me and shouting my name out and saying this is what you got to do. I didn't have a whitelist. Like I didn't do a traditional kind of launch, and I think in some ways it helped and in some ways it hurt. But I do, you know, I understand more about the digital community and more about the Web3 world. I do just wonder if people, like, why people are in it. Are they in it to be part of the community? Are they in it to make money? Are they in it to flip? Are they in it to kind of
Yeah.
there's just so many different ways. I guess that's part of everyday life, but I guess for me it would be easier to know that this is legit because it's legit. I tell this to young artists all the time. Like, the beautiful thing about social media in my mind is that if you have great work and you post it on on social media like Instagram, whether you have 1 million followers or no followers, you are going to get found, because people are like, great work should stand for itself. And I think that that's where I struggle with in some of the Web3 world, is that it's not always about what's the best work, and
No.
that's not really objective. It's who has the biggest community, who has the greatest people around it saying this is good, whether it is or it isn't. There's certain projects I could name, and I don't want to necessarily get myself in hot water, but I look at it and think, amazing community. I see everything around it, but from the artist standpoint, it has their own style, and I vote for all creatives, but it's just the value of what I attach to it doesn't necessarily match up with the value that other people attach with it. And that's part of the beautiful craziness, I would say, of the art world, is that your piece is not worth, what everyone says they're willing to pay. It's worth what that one person is willing to pay for it, who's going to put their money where their mouth is. And so there's a lot to be optimistic about, and there's a lot to still learn, I would say, in the Web3 community.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, that question off the top that you mentioned, as far as, what's your purpose for being in Web3, and what's your purpose for buying my art, my creativity on the blockchain? Because some people, and I think it's always existed in the art space, right? There are people who want to sell their art, but I think it's far less common. I think in the traditional art space, when you're buying art, yes, you might and likely hope that it goes up in value long term, but most people who are buying art want it as like either a bragging rights, or they're just general artsy people who love having as much nice art in their house as possible, and maybe they do flip it down the road, but it's not their core reason for purchasing it, right? Whereas I do think in the Web3 NFT space, and it comes with that gamified side of it, right? The whole degen culture, if you will, that flipping is not necessarily some artists will disagree with this, but it's not devaluing your art. It's just saying, I bought this for $50 and I think it's worth $500. If you want to buy it from me, that's what you're going to have to buy it. That's what you're going to have to pay. So they'll list it at that price, and maybe they sell it, maybe they don't. And then to your point about the bigger communities, you get into the PFP side of things, and then the art doesn't matter at all, frankly. It just comes back to like, what's the goal of this, overall project, and do people think it's going to succeed at that goal? And people buy in, debating whether or not it's going to succeed. And if it does succeed, of course, the hope is that the money then that the NFT is worth a whole bunch more value, right? So it's a very different art space, but it has its roots, I think, in the traditional art space.
I keep going back to the price of everything on HBO, and it says, of all the markets in the world, the art market is so unique in that a few people can come together and say, this is what this is worth, and then establish that. And I feel that really successful projects can have that kind of initial push and those initial buyers, those initial voices. But if you get people together and say, you're going to get to buy in at X, and tell everyone it's worth 2X, and they come in and buy it at 2X, it's part of the natural economic, system here. And I get that. I wish there was, I don't know. It just seems kind of strange how how easy it is to kind of, like you said, gamify. If these three people say it's worth this, then it's got to be worth that. It could be true, it could not be true.
Yeah. And that's all it takes, and I mean, with what you're doing with these one-of-ones, right? You just need one person come along, love this one piece, and whether or not they want to sell it in the future is kind of irrelevant, right? It's just kind of like, they clearly resonate with it, they see the value in it, and they're going to purchase that, and they will likely never let go of it for less than that.
And that was honestly a big turning point, was when I met a really big digital influencer who came to the show in Puerto Rico, saw a piece, bought it on the spot, told people about it. That was kind of what got the second really exciting push going. And when you have people in that world who really see it and value it and kind of see eye to eye with you, I think you really have to treat them in a very special way and respect them, and kind of see where they take you, because your supporters are your biggest, I would say your biggest leads to future supporters.
Most def. Grayson coming through with another interesting question here. He's saying, what do you think the NFT space is missing as a medium? Like, do you think it needs more support for text or videos or other products, and maybe how that impacts onboarding?
I'd love to see more physical gallery spaces that have digital screens with them. I think that would allow more mass adoption from the traditional art world to see it. I think over the last few years, you've seen more and more screens at every Scope and Art Basel show, which I find really encouraging for the Web3 world.
Mm.
And I think there needs to be ways where it can easily translate into existing environments for the traditional art world to see that it actually has value. I think that to me is the biggest way. I mean, that's what, as I'm looking at potential gallery partners now, I don't want to partner with just any gallery. I want to partner with one that has the screens that can really show it at its best, but also has a collector base, and really well-known collectors. And those don't necessarily always go hand in hand, because you usually have some of the high-end galleries that have huge Rolodexes and major connections, but don't always have the screens and don't always have that future vision of creating for the Web3 world. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities in that. I think you see more and more galleries popping up and more galleries having that as an option. And I think that when it's more mass market, you'll see a lot more artists and a lot more buyers coming in.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, there you go. That speaks to your roots in the traditional art space as well. And I do think we are seeing more of it happening, to your point. I mean, Art Basel is, as a Web3 native, like, we just view Art Basel as a Web3 event, even though it's not, and it has not been, right? It's been around for so long. It's not an NFT event at all. But I can tell you, those of us who are deep in the space, we view Art Basel as an NFT event, because there's enough satellite NFT things happening. As you said, even at Scope, even at some of these traditional galleries, there's, little corners of NFT stuff that's super interesting. I wouldn't have met you if I didn't attend, right? And found out about this series. So yeah, I think there is that angle to it. And when it comes to the onboarding, are you hearing from people specifically what they're waiting for? Maybe like, what do they want to see in the space before they get into it? Because a lot of artists, I assume, from the traditional space.
It's interesting. I think that overall people want more proof. They want more success stories, and the more we can amplify really great projects, we can really amplify long-lasting impressions. The more we can highlight projects that give back to the community and have really good stories around it, the more people buy in on a wider scale. So I think I'm doing my part for that. I think you're doing your part for that. I think a lot of people are doing their part for that. It's just, it can be really slow. And I recently heard someone said they're not trying to change people from no to yes. They're trying to take more of the maybes and turn them into yeses. And they're trying to take more of the yeses and make them hell yeses. And I really like that, because one, it's easier to do, but also two, the enthusiasm among that can really build a broader scheme, which I think can reflect into a lot of people's lives.
No doubt, no doubt. And you did mention Roblox with your daughters there. And so how much do you think the metaverse is going to play a huge role in kind of increasing the perceived value? And like you said, that social proof that NFTs are here to stay, that the, having a digital gallery in the metaverse can actually be a profitable endeavor. Right now the foot traffic's not really there. But in a future where there is foot traffic in the metaverse, you can imagine people stumbling upon one of your pieces in a random corner of the metaverse, clicking on it and being like, whoa, it's still available. It's a one of one, I'm grabbing this, So what do you think about the metaverse as an avenue to A, increase onboarding, but B, also be a good tool for artists like yourself?
I love that. When I think of the metaverse, I think that it's really disjointed, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. There's so many different projects that are competing and so many different ideas. And I guess that's true with markets, but if I can put that aside, I think that wherever there are eyeballs, there will be value. And the more people who do something, there's always going to be marketing dollars around that. And so from a strictly getting your product out there and being in front of cool people, I see that as a possibility. You're making me think about one of my friends who has a digital gallery, and I was hesitant to, put my NFTs in there, but I'm like, now, I thought about this a few weeks back, but you're putting it to the top of my list here. It's like, while they're just sitting on, the physical pieces are sitting in my space and the digital pieces are just on Maker's Place, there's no reason why they can't be, amplified in another way. And so, I don't know. I think I think that the metaverse needs kind of like a PR company where it's not like, I understand the degen mentality, but when other people hear it, I think it's like, ooh, these degenerates, like, why would I want to be doing this with them? And you see these like futuristic movies, and it's like the people who are just sitting in their basements and, ordering in food and not interacting with the real world. I think it's not that. It can be that, as could anything. But I think if there can be more of a focus on the communal, on the positive, on the progression and where it's going, the fact that we can have completely transparent aspects for parts of business that weren't that way, I think is what really appealed me the most. I think we can get to a place where we all believe in.
Awesome. Well, I hope I inspired you to put some pieces up in a digital gallery there. There's no reason not to, right? Like you said, it's just more foot traffic. You never know. And that's the type of stuff we like to inspire on the show too. So let us know if you do end up, and we'll promote it and share it out. I'd love to check it out for sure. So I wanted to mention or ask you a little bit about Maker's Place. It is a really cool kind of platform, a little bit different than some of the other options in Web3 and NFTs. How have you found the experience of working with Maker's Place, and how do you view it kind of in contrast to, say, a Manifold? I don't know if you're familiar with like a custom contract that you kind of pretty much own yourself and you can put on different exchanges yourself, compared to a Maker's Place where they offer the added value of something like a gallery at scope, right? Something like, being put in front of the more traditional art collectors. And I think that's part of their value, right? So how has the experience been with Maker's Place?
I've really enjoyed working with Maker's Place. I think it really stemmed from my relationship with one of the main employees there, Jessica Davidson, who I'd worked with outside of Maker's Place before she started working there on a bunch of different art galleries and events, and had a lot of great success. We had a really similar positive creative energy, and I just, she really brought me into the fold. And then, like you said, being able to be brought to scope and showing my works on the biggest art stage in the world and getting the traffic and the connections and the ideas around that, it's really kind of can't compare to any of the other aspects. And for me, in terms of a physical component of wanting to show it in the real world and the digital, they were the perfect partner. And I definitely see myself, working with them in a continued aspect of different shows and hopefully different collections. So I definitely recommend checking them out. They, one of the caveats is they do have a higher percentage than some of the other traditional marketplaces, but they do have a really great hands-on approach to getting out there and helping build up artists. And I think that in that aspect, it really just depends on how you want to create your art, your brand, your world. But I would definitely recommend them.
Nice. And when looking at like what we had discussed, maybe where you want to drop an NFT that is a little more accessible, that maybe you want to broaden your community base, your collector base on the blockchain, have you looked at a Manifold or looked at like a kind of independent avenue for any kind of NFTs around the corner?
I got to look a little bit more into Manifold. I started out on OpenSea, and that was because I was basically finding my clients in the real world and then saying, if you want to buy the NFT that comes with this piece, I would sell it to them there. And so I do think there is the eBay of the Web3 world does make sense from a low percentage aspect if you know the buyer and you can bring someone in. But I think from a collection standpoint, I do like the idea of having it all together. Right now, as I'm making pieces for collectors, it's kind of like on a one-by-one basis. And to put one piece up at a time, sell it, one piece up at a time to sell it, I just need to figure out how that can make the most sense versus here's a full collection, here's how they all come together.
Right.
I'm working with, like I said, the Michael Jordan piece, and I want to work with living icons where I can see, in different sports or entertainment avenues where people really, really value them. This idea of like actually taking physical collectibles and making them digital, and taking, a book signed by Michael Jordan, turning it into artwork, making an NFT of it, and then also, seeing it as a digital collectible, I find a really powerful path forward.
That is super interesting for sure. Do you think that sports signatures will have similar impact to the artist signatures? And how would you market it? And would you just continue kind of doing it the same way?
I think from a Web2 perspective, my thoughts are there's a big difference between in terms of the value if the icon is alive or as pet. So it's in terms of rarity and the price, right? So there's an aspect of that. My goal, and I just started this a few weeks ago, but I'm putting together kind of a video series where rather than the signature series where I did I call it a cross-generational collaboration, where I read their bios and I watched their documentaries, and then I internalized that and I made it my own to create with their book. I want to start interviewing famous artists, authors, creators who have books out, and talk to them about their book all on camera, kind of understand their thinking, their inspiration, and then show the creative process of turning their signed book into a work of art. And so I think it's kind of blending a few of my favorite ideas, not only in terms of entertainment, but in terms of interviewing and also creating, and to get their actual input in the real world while they're alive, I think is really, really, really exciting. So that's where
awesome.
I'm moving forward.
You let the cat out the bag with Michael Jordan. Are there any others you want to share?
There's a few. Right now I'm basically only creating around books for clients who basically ask for them. So right now it's kind of it's an incoming aspect. I think moving ahead, I would like to have a sports collection. I would love to have a entertainer collection. I mean, I think the aspects, the options are endless. I really see it as a new art category where you're taking these books that are not being appreciated and you're putting it on your wall and being able to appreciate it on an everyday basis and see it. I mean, this Jordan piece I love is just, it tells a story chronologically. Like, I can picture it in my mind, it's from his North Carolina days to getting drafted, to his shoe deal, to the triangle offense, to, the slam dunk competition, to the dream team, to retiring, to the Chicago, the Barons, to 45, to making his last a game at the Madison Square Garden. Like, it's a chronological book and it tells a story. And I think that art to me has always been about storytelling, and whether I'm working directly for a client or seeing that in something, I really just want to share those stories in a more compelling way. And I think having an aspect where it touches the story, what the story is about, like touching that signature from that icon, makes it even more valuable.
Yeah, and Michael Jordan definitely has probably the most iconic athletic story, or one of the most. Everyone knows it. Everyone's familiar with it. It's like prolific. It's very interesting. So very cool. I can't wait to see that. And that is going to have the digital component, or is that just a strictly physical for a client?
So right now that is it's unknown. I'd say I've only created the physical so far. It is debatable whether or not I will create the digital, but I feel like I need to stay true to myself, because I do believe everyone should have a digital component, but I need to also be cognizant of my audience if they want it in one way or not. So
for sure.
It's hard to create the digital and then to only publish it if I find the collector who wants to purchase it that way.
No doubt. And how are you finding that contrast in general? Because you are a traditional artist, of course. I see amazing art behind you. You're working on a piece for your wife. So how do you feel about like the physical pieces that you make and the physical art you sell? And is it creating any kind of friction with your NFT, career or trajectory? Or is it all kind of really good symbiotic kind of relationship? And, you do certain physical pieces, you do murals, which are really amazing. I saw you had one at a pool there that you released yesterday. So that was really cool. Yeah. So how is that working as far as the balance between the physical art you provide and what you're doing on the blockchain?
I think all artists should be able to explore their creative freedom in any medium. And I think that I'm really fortunate to be able to translate it, like you said, into these illuminated books, into murals, into paintings, into into digital design, into a variety of different ways where I still have my voice and my idea, but I can take that and run with it however I see fit. And so I don't like to be pigeonholed in any way. I think there are some really great artists who've said, this is the one thing I'm going to do, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it, and that's all they do. And they get known for that, but it can be a little bit stifling in my opinion, although it is pretty honorable to be known specifically for something. So it comes both ways. But for me, I think it's really open-ended, and just being allowed to honor my creativity in whichever way it goes, and figuring out if it does have a product market fit, finding that buyer and seeing how they want to consume it. I think is important, because that's how we artists survive and are able to take care of ourselves and our families. So it's definitely open, and trying to listen to the market, but also trying to listen to my heart.
Amazing. I do want to get a little bit of artistic process on one of these, because the Frida Kahlo always jumps out at me. And I know it is one of the ones that has sold, but a little bit of just description of what we're looking at here, because the eyes blink, it's got cool art cutouts, got her own, I believe it's her writing around the corner about revolution and the Louvre, and it's really impactful. I love it. If you could just give us a little bit of a breakdown of the Frida Kahlo piece as we wind down here. If there are any other questions from the chat, now's the time to ask them. But give Give us a little bit of a description of this piece.
That piece was unique as a piece that was actually a Time magazine article, the first ever article that mentioned her. And so it was really old, 1938, I believe.
Wow.
And I took the learnings that as I was reading about her and understanding who she was, I basically wrote the important aspects of her life around the border. And then that one is a unique one in that it was a collage piece. So it was taking the aspects of the magazine and turning them into a combination of two of her most famous works. And so that one and the Keith Haring one were both magazines that were more so collage, but magazine pages are a little bit thinner and they don't kind of pop out as well, versus with the books, you get a thicker page, it can really pop out, it can have a little bit more a robust nature to it. But the idea, like I said earlier, is just storytelling and trying to figure out how am I translating that through either prior works, through accomplishments, through kind of a past, present, future of where they've been in their career. And I feel that, there is a unique aspect to each one of the signature series pieces, but each of them are able to tell a story of the artist in a different way, which kind of links them together as well.
Awesome, man. It's really, really cool. And congrats on the sale on that one. If I ever become a ETH whale, this would be the type of art I'll be looking for, the high caliber and a physical piece, looking at this Basquiat, $100,000 one day. So Ray Song coming through with an interesting question here. Have you ever considered, or would you ever cut up or burn an NFT, like a famous NFT, and then make a physical of it? So almost doing the reverse of what you've done.
I've definitely thought about burning both, one or the other in different ways. I think it would be harder for me to physically burn one of these rare, one of a kind signed books that I've also turned into art. But I think, I think there are unique ways for people to consume the art, and there are people who just say, I want the digital version, it's easier and I can put it anywhere, I don't have to worry about it, versus the physical one has to be shipped and hung and properly stored. And I see the benefits and the excitement of both. I'm still in the world of I want to have the two of them combined, because I feel like more is better in that sense. But I wouldn't rule it out as saying I would never burn one or the other.
Yeah, I think he's thinking about, like, in contrast as well, from the perspective of, like, let's say a Beeple, right? Where he does his creations and you buy one, which would be really expensive first of all, and then to burn it, and then to actually create like a physical in your own style, kind of inspired by the NFT that you burnt, I think might be an interesting kind of flip on its head of your process that you've done from the physical world, bringing it into digital.
I will add that to my creative list in my note.
Yeah. Grayson's coming through with the interesting questions today. Appreciate you, Grayson. Awesome. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. I think we've dropped some really great gems for artists in the space, how to navigate the fact that you're reaching out to children who are artistic and really wanting to learn, and that's part of your offer with these amazing one-of-one, very rare digital NFT pieces that you've got on Maker's Place. It's really fascinating, man. So what are you most looking forward to? What's kind of around the corner for you, both on the blockchain, but even just more broadly, if you'd like to share what's kind of on the horizon for Marco?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some jobs out of town, which I'm really excited about. I mean, the show I was talking about earlier, I still don't know how it's going to be translated, whether it's going to be a YouTube channel or for social media, but I just like the idea of working in real life, talking to, interviewing these famous artists, these famous authors, and then taking a book signed by them, creating it, and then presenting it back to them. I think it creates an excitement and a wonder. Like, I can't go up to Basquiat and be like, hey, what do you think of this book I created? But I could go up to, like a Jeff Koons or, a Shepard Fairey or someone. So I do have a vision of like starting with artists who I know and working in my network and kind of building up to kind of continue that. I don't know. It's like, it's the first time I feel really, really excited about something, like more so than everything else since the signature series when I started it in 2020. The tricky thing is that, I'm trying to work with a film crew, and there's always differences of like working with schedules, and it's not like only me. It's
right.
like, and I feel that there's beauty in that because they can take their creative vision and take it beyond what I have. But I think from a shared creativity perspective and the logistics and everything together, yeah, you're going to hear about this. I'm going to call it the Illuminated Series.
Yeah, definitely. Let us know when that's live, and we'll share it with the community. That's pretty awesome. And yeah, to your point about collaboration, it can yield amazing results, but it can also complicate things and maybe make things a little more difficult when trying to pull all the pieces together. But I appreciate that, and thank you so much, Marco. I'm not sure if we have any other questions from the chat. If we do, feel free to ask now. Final question for myself, and you kind of hit on this in different ways already, but looking at, encouraging artists who are new to Web3, maybe those who are just about to jump in, like you said, those maybes, right? How are you kind of having that conversation, and how would you kind of encourage new artists to jump in and then persevere for the long haul?
Yeah, I think it's important for artists to explore their creativity in whatever medium they choose. If they decide to mess around with the physical world, that's beautiful, and digital world as well. I want to encourage creativity in any format, because I think it leads to better aspects for us all. I think specifically, if there are people who are thinking about the NFT world, I think it's easy to get scared of these big names or these ideas and kind of the what ifs and the potential worrying about the future. Got to get rid of that. You got to focus on yourself. You got to focus on your creativity and just see what comes about. See what the real utility is. I think for known names, I know there are projects that have been successful with no real utility or just beautiful art. And I think that beautiful art sells itself. But I think to really make yourself unique and to stand out, to have a unique utility, building a network anywhere, whether it's physical, digital, somewhere in between, always helps out. I mean, that's how I started with my buyers and my community, was really in the real world and connecting with people who appreciated my art, and then took them into the Web3 community. So it's a wild and crazy journey. We each have our own recommendations and ups and downs, but it's overall been a very, very positive experience, and I look forward to continuing to learn and continuing to grow.
Amazing. So I'm hearing, don't let yourself get discouraged. Maybe be patient, be patient. Things happen in due time. And just have fun with it, right? Like, enjoy the technology, enjoy the learning process, and the buyers, the community, the collectors will come in time, right? So
that's true.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Marco. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Do you have any final words or anything you'd like to add before we
I appreciate what you're doing. Glad to be wrapping up season 3. That's a huge accomplishment for yourself. I hope you can look back on that and see some amazing things that you've contributed to this community and made all of our lives better here. So thank you for including me and for doing what you do. I'm just excited for the future and continue to be optimistic with creativity and where I see myself and where I see the entire community going. So keep creating, keep doing your thing, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marco. I appreciate those words of encouragement. And like you said, it is the end of season 3, episode 66. We will be on break for 2 weeks, coming back on June 28th, I believe it is. So looking forward to that conversation. And thank you, everybody who's been listening, supporting the show. We will continue pushing things forward, and we will be back with season 4 in a couple weeks. Until then, we'll catch you all in the metaverse. Peace out.